Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. We've done a couple of videos recently about blueprints that we have found, or in this case, refound. We knew they were there, we just haven't looked at them for a while. And in the meantime, we've come up with new information about the space. So today we are in the Combat Engagement Center, and we have the set of blueprints for this space as it would have originally looked in 1982 when it was first installed. A brief recap about CEC on Iowa-class battleships. New Jersey and Iowa, reactivated in 1982 and 1984 respectively, had a similar or identical CEC in the footprint that you see right now, which is to say that it is on the starboard side. It goes about 2/3 of the way across the superstructure, and there's a partition bulkhead here blocking off the other side of the space. Missouri and Wisconsin get a completely different footprint for their CEC, which goes from the starboard side all the way over to the port side without that partition bulkhead, but does have kind of a closet on the outboard starboard side with some of the stuff that we have on that side of the bulkhead. But it gives them a larger, more capable command center. This small space that you see right here would have had somewhere around 20 to 30 sailors in it during general quarters. There's about a dozen seats, and then there would be almost an equal number of people standing, hovering over those guys. There's not a whole lot of room in this space. Anyway, New Jersey's CEC is updated very, very late in her career, probably during her big 1987 reactivation, if I had to guess. One of the spaces that's in here is TFCC, or the Task Force Command Center, which wasn't originally in here, gets added when we have an admiral, and that work is being done around the 1987 yard period. So that makes me think that the other changes probably happen at the same time. Now, I'm not aware of blueprints for those changes, and interestingly, on Iowa, which is decommissioned around 1990, she never gets those modifications. So her space probably looks the closest to what Iowa and New Jersey had originally. It's one of the things I love about all four completed Iowa-class battleships still being extant. They're all completely different, but that difference gives you a look at the ships over time. We still have the officer's galley that many of the others lost. We still have Central Station with the helm that many of the others lost. Iowa still has that more original CEC configuration, so we can go there and see what it was supposed to look like. And now we've got these blueprints that further help us with that. Many of the electronics that you see in this space that have been lovingly lit up by our volunteers were not here when the museum first got the ship. A lot of it was taken off because it was still functional and was used on other active ships. And then we had to go back and collect the stuff. How do we know what to collect? Some of it, we can tell what went on this base. We know the ship was supposed to have Tomahawks. Obviously, that's a base where a Tomahawk's supposed to go. Some of it, there's like a power cord coming down to it that says what it's for. But some of it, we have to consult plans like this to figure out, oh, hey, what was supposed to be mounted over here? What did this electrical cable go to? What goes on this bracket? And this set of plans is a really fantastic look at how this space would have been outfitted in 1982 when the ship was first reactivated. So first off, we've got two sheets here, and actually each sheet has two plans on it. And there's a line down the middle where if they had been full-size plans, they would have been cut along that line, essentially. Interestingly, on here it says, reduced sized, print not to scale. These prints almost always come out that 1/16 of an inch on the blueprint equals 1 foot, which I think is 1/96 scale. But it makes it really easy for many of the types of blueprints to be able to just measure it with a ruler to get your idea of the space. These have clearly been reduced in size and stamped as such, so you can't get that same kind of measurement out of them. And that allows them to condense it on smaller sets. So these aren't the plans that are originally built, they're just copies. You can kind of see that they're on this yellowish 1980s printer paper, but you can see the like blueprint material printed in blue ink on these. So very obvious that they're copies, very obvious that they're reduced scale. but it means that they're kind of portable. They were pretty easy to bring up here and now look around the room and be like, oh, this used to be here, this used to be there. So really cool to be able to tie these now to the space and figure out a little bit better what was going on and what changes were made. Because sometimes the changes that are made tell us just as much as the blueprints. As obviously something wasn't working, or they came out with a new technology, had to add something in. So it's really interesting to see the things that are here now that were not then. For example, the first page of the blueprint here is just the list of all the equipment with its numbers. So that on the other pages, which are like top views, side views, things like that, the various equipment is numbered so you can match it to the blueprint. Something that doesn't show up on here is TP, the Tomahawk Engagement Planning, Exercise, and Evaluation Console. That is something that was very important to add when we got the sea attack variant of the Tomahawks. Normal land attack Tomahawks, or TLAM-Cs, they are great for, they have terrain mapping radar. They go exactly where you tell them to. You load that into them and they launch. The naval attack version, you're firing at a target that's moving. So you program into it essentially to go to a place and then start doing a search pattern to pick up a target and engage it. But this is still a multi-million-dollar missile. You don't want to expend it if you don't have a good chance of success. So you get actionable information that there's a Soviet destroyer out there you want to shoot at. You know that that Soviet destroyer has a top speed of about 30 knots. You received this information about an hour ago. So essentially it can be up to 30 miles in any direction from where you got that original report. So you know what direction it was sailing in when you got that report. So you might make your center about 15 miles, that's a normal cruising speed, in the direction it had been going, and then have it start doing a search pattern. Before you expend that multi-million-dollar missile, though, you plug that into TP, and it will tell you the likelihood of you getting a hit off of that solution. Did you program it wrong and really it can move further outside that box, in which case the missile might be a waste? Are there multiple targets there, some of them friendly, in which case you might not get the results you want? So really cool addition to this space. When New Jersey was first reactivated, they only had conventional Tomahawks. She was the first surface ship to have these Tomahawks installed. She was the first one to fire one in tests, but the original production run was just the conventional one. So it is later on that they start producing the other variants of Tomahawks, like the Sea Attack version or the one that makes cities glow in the dark that we talk about a lot on board. So new equipment is being added alongside those new systems. So it's interesting to see that even though the naval version was planned at this time and the consoles could control it, that they hadn't planned on TP at that point. It's added in later on. Another really interesting thing that this gives us is that the space next door is listed off as unassigned. And we're pretty sure it was always assigned. The space next door is SSES, or Ships Signals Exploitation Space. There would be spooks in there that would basically be receiving electronic signals from enemy ships. And then from those signals, they can determine various information. Like were you receiving a radar signal, you now know what frequency that type of Russian radar operates on. You might even be able to determine the type of ship it is by knowing that it's a top hat radar versus whatever other types. Another thing is you can pick up Russian radio transmissions. You might be able to translate them, you might be able to decode them, and we'd often have crew members on board assigned to SSES who were linguist specialists who could do that. So why is it listed on here as unassigned? Because the use of that space was classified. During the 1980s, when they were installing the air conditioning system on board, Richard Landgraf, who was in charge of the Battleship program at Long Beach, writes in his memoirs that he's fighting with the Navy to figure out what kind of equipment's going to go in there so he can figure out what size air conditioner to put in. And they keep telling him, it's classified, we can't tell you, we can't tell you. And he's like, well, I can't put an air conditioner in unless I know you're going to have equipment in there that's putting off this much heat and needs this much force. So this, listing that as unassigned, probably ties back to that story. The other really cool thing is we've always referred to the chair here in the center of the room as the Tactical Action Officer's chair. That's under the assumption that the captain is usually commanding the ship from the bridge, and that it would be a senior weapons officer who's down here in command of this space. And so obviously that's the person who would be in this chair. However, the blueprints list this chair as the commanding officer's chair, and it says that the TAO would be sort of over here at this console. Now these blueprints show these status boards as angled inward to give more space here, and it shows this desk being larger with a seat for the TAO and a seat for a radio operator. Now it seems like as they're adding new stuff into this space, this gets reconfigured. Again, Iowa still has the original double chair setup here, but this counter here is long enough that you can probably still have, you've got all your internal communications here and your radio phones. This is probably the radio operator, and TAO can sit right here, right next to the captain. He's got fairly good visibility from this space. Talking to some former crew members who served in this space aboard Iowa-class battleships, they confirmed what the blueprint said, not what we've said on our tours all along, in that this was the captain's chair. In theory, TAO would sit here outside of general quarters when the captain likely isn't in the room, but much like the captain's chair on the bridge, it's bad form to do so. So kind of unlikely that TAO would be in here, and this chair would more often than not be unused. So that's just a handful of the things that we're able to determine about this space, rediscovering these blueprints and being able to pair that with physical archaeology of the space. There's a TP here, it's not on the blueprints. Being able to pair it with information that we've received from like written memoirs, like Richard Landgraf stuff, like the story behind why SSES is listed as unassigned even though they always knew what it was going to be, or paired with the recollections of former crew members who served in this space or spaces like it on other Iowas, such as Commander Mellon's recollections from USS Missouri of when Captain Case would have used the captain's chair on her. And it's new information like this that has us continue to come back to the blueprints, continue to come back to the physical spaces on this ship to weave more and more of these stories together to get a complete picture of the ship's history. And that's just in one single room. We've got 1,600 spaces on the ship. What's a space you want to see us do a deep dive into later, much like we did in CEC today? Let us know in the comment section down below. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate your support. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to donate to support the museum. Your support allows us to spend the time to do this kind of research. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find out about the museum and our channel. Thanks for watching.